Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast and media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, the Shark, and Stormflame. Today is our 175th episode, and we're discussing the 2003 Lloyd In Space episode, A Place for Larry. So, let's get things started.
On today's episode of SpongeBob Space Pants.
Nice. So much space. Need to see it all.
Lloyd In Space is made by Joe and Sola B here and Paul Germain, the creators of another very popular Disney Channel show, Recess, which, by the way, still absolutely holds up. If you haven't seen that show in a while, go check it out because it really is a fun time.
Same.
Lloyd In Space is actually their follow-up show, and basically is just what if Recess, but it took place on Deep Space Nine. The other thing that really is impressive too is just the amount of amazing voice actors that this show had on it, because Lloyd was Gus on Recess, Eddie, the main human character, also voiced Harold on Hey Arnold, Douglas is voiced by the same voice actress of Milhouse, and Kurt is voiced by Bill Fagerbach, who needs no introduction.
Exactly.
And that's just the four main characters. We're going to get to a lot of the other characters because this show, probably pound for pound, has the most amount of talent of anything we've discussed on the podcast in a while.
Yeah, so far, well, it's not exactly like on the level of spatial parody that some Space Quest is known for. Probably going to get to that someday if we find something there, but Recess definitely tickles a nice little fancy that isn't exactly that sort of thing, but for it being a space sort of thing, it's very much appreciated.
The show begins with a zoom in on the Intrepidville space station as dramatic music plays. It zooms into a window before a space baseball hits it. And no, a space baseball is not to be confused with space balls. That's something entirely different.
Exactly.
It turns out to be Lloyd's friends, asking if he wants to join them, but Lloyd's mother, Nora, yells at him if he cleaned his room yet. Nora is voiced by April Winchell, who basically is just doing her Sylvia from Wander Over Yonder voice. So, if you've ever wondered what Sylvia from Wander Over Yonder would sound like in Starfleet, now you know.
Yep, pretty much been 3 for 3 for April Winchell. First with Sylvia, then again Tanya Vandervlock, personal favorite. So, do I hear a 4 in the future? Only one way to find out.
Hopefully we do get to see her. Lloyd then puts on a hologram and runs through the space station, dodging both Station the computer, who actually is voiced by Brian George, probably best known for playing Babu on Seinfeld, as well as his teacher, Mrs. Bolt, who's voiced by Trish McNeil, and that's not the last time we'll talk about her in this episode.
Nice.
The theme music here sounds really cool and high energy. It has such a fun little sci-fi twist on it, and yeah, it basically is a sci-fi version of the Recess theme, which more of that is always a good thing, let's be real. After Lloyd manages to get out of the airlock, he gets to the others where they play baseball, but Lloyd hits a window, causing decompression to occur and a bunch of aliens to be sucked out. Nora appears on a telescreen and yells at her son, as the intro ends with Lloyd chuckling and saying, oops, and think here, he has a really weird animated grin here. I get what they were going for with it, but the way this looks, it looks more psychotic than anything else, you know?
Exactly. It looks like he just witnessed shit and slowly is breaking on the inside. Like he just witnessed a very intense scene from something like Gundam Witch from Mercury, which I get what you would be feeling in that instance, but if it's anything worse, then that kid has every right to look the way he does.
Yeah, that grin kind of looks like something the Grinch child could be. I'm wondering who is Lloyd's dad.
Hopefully it's not Garmadon.
Yeah, but there's also one character we did forget to mention in the intro, Lloyd's sister, but I haven't seen this show in ages. I don't remember her name.
She's missed not appearing in this episode anyways, so maybe later.
Yeah, but that...
Yeah, so I was kind of saying like, oh, did I do that? And it's like, you mean cause the possible death or damages of all the people inside the colony? Yes.
Yeah.
The episode itself begins on a zoom in on what appears to be a giant UFO, before it's revealed that it turns out to be just a frisbee tossed around by Lloyd and his friends. Lloyd tosses it to Eddie, who throws it to Kurt. Douglas tries to catch it, but because he's so short, it literally just goes over him in a cute gag. Kurt runs up to the hover disc, yelling how he's going to catch it, but before he can, an alien pet steals the disc. Before then, a hostile alien spaceship hovers over them. It fires lasers at the space station as Dunkirk, voiced by Dan Castellaneta, notes the ship. And this character, this basically is what it would be like if Dan voiced Kif from Futurama.
Nice.
The warship turns out to be run by a giant spider alien voiced by Tom Kenny in his first of 4 appearances on this episode. And believe me, they knew how to use this guy.
Oh, for sure.
Tom Kenny's a giant spider then? Huh, I guess I know what Patrick was dreaming about that night where he started to crush SpongeBob with his rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, strap yourselves in because we're going to make a lot more SpongeBob jokes from here on in.
Given he has that spider alien guy, he mentioned he has an army, and I have no choice but to mention as giant spiders, giant legions of spiders.
Nora asks why they are firing on the station, as the spider alien says they wish to dock on their space station as his army needs their rest. Nora says that's no reason to attack the ship, as the spider alien says that he tried contacting them but got no response. Nora goes over to see why, as Larry is the ensign in charge of ship docking, only to find that he turned off the computer because he's busy making birthday cards. Now, Larry is actually our main protagonist of the episode, and he's voiced by none other than Eddie Deason. So, in the span of this podcast, he went from being killed by an alien superweapon to being an alien. So, that's a lateral move right there.
Yeah, new headcanon. Mandark, his own nemesis, into a frick alien, shipped him off into space with amnesia, and to this day, he is the way he is because of that.
I have the theory that Larry is the reincarnation of that one kid from Polar Express.
Nice.
And I wonder which birthday card has a train on it.
As the spider asks, "What kind of idiots do you have working on your bridge?" Nora apologizes to the spider alien. Larry then remarks, "Gee, he sure seemed like a nice guy," as Nora yells at him about wasting everyone's time rather than doing his job. He offers to give her a hug as she then berates him, saying how everyone has very serious duties to perform and storms off. Dunkirk approaches Larry, sarcastically telling him, "Well done," as Larry asks if the commander is mad at him. Dunkirk yells that of course she's mad at him, as, this is a direct quote, "You hopelessly foul up every single task you are given," as Larry offers instead to make some cookies. Dunkirk and Nora then receive a communication from Lloyd, yelling to them about the spider alien's giant spaceship.
Not gonna lie, if this was aged up for viewers that were adults, this would absolutely be passed off for a very interesting Futurama episode, cursing and all.
Nora then tells him that it's all under control, as Lloyd says they have another problem. Larry goes to the galley and begins baking cookies, and at least he's not as annoying of a space chef as Neelix from Voyager. Nora then yells at him to come there from the bridge, and she then tells him that there's a problem in the park that she doesn't have time to take care of, as Larry tells her that he has something that'll make her happy. Nora says that what will make her happy is if he goes to the park and fixes whatever the problem is, as Larry tries to explain about the cookies, but she yells at him to leave. We cut to the park where Larry is looking inside of an air vent, asking Lloyd if the alien pet took the hover disc and put it in the vent. Larry climbs into the vent, calling out to the pet that, "You've got my pal's hover disc and they really need it back." The pet's owner then arrives, asking where it is, as the boy says that it's in the vent. And one thing to point out, this pet owner, he's a guy who was doing an impression of Frank Nelson, who, if you don't know who Frank Nelson was, he was a comedian best known from I Love Lucy and Jack Benny. If you've ever seen the "Yes" guy from The Simpsons, that's Frank Nelson, and he really was funny. The pet owner says that once Snookum goes in a vent, it's hard getting him out, as Larry pulls out the pet with the owner cooing over it. Now, what's interesting here is the alien pet right now is voiced by Tom Kenny, doing a slight variation on his Gary voice.
Yeah, that's interesting to know.
That would explain why it has stalk eyes, I guess. I mean, it looks like a cat, but it has stalk eyes like a snail. I thought that was a little weird, but it is an alien, so.
Yep,
Exactly.
yep. Larry then gives the boys the hover disc as Lloyd asks if he wants to play. Larry says he shouldn't, but Douglas insists, as Eddie says, "As best friend of the commander's son, I order you to play with us," as Larry agrees. Eddie then throws the hover disc at Larry, as it hits him in the head, and he goes, "Wow, that was fun. Did I do a good job?" And probably one of the funniest moments of the episode. Just the way it's animated and the way Eddie Deason delivers that line, it is so hilarious.
It's like the freaking style. Oh, good. A concussion.
Lloyd then tells him to catch the disc, as Larry tries to do so, only for him to bonk into a tree and have fruit fall on his head. He then asks to play some more, as we get a montage of Larry failing at playing Hover Disc, as Eddie says, "This is the best game of Hover Disc I've played," and Douglas says, "Leave it to Larry to make Hover Disc 76% more fun." Larry throws the Hover Disc to them, but it hovers in the air before then falling down, with the batteries being dead. Larry says that they keep batteries on the bridge in case of emergency, as we cut to them arriving there. Lloyd asks if it's a good idea to use the emergency batteries for a hover disc, as Larry says it's no problem because nothing goes wrong on the bridge. Famous last words. He then opens the door, only for a bunch of dough to ooze out of it. Nora screams at Larry, as Dunkirk explains that he forgot to turn off the cookie baking machine, and its circuits broke, causing it to go haywire. Larry says that he'll turn off the machine next time, as Nora yells that there will be no next time, and this is the final straw. Oh, go ahead, Stormflame.
I gotta say, for a possibly military-centered room, I love the fact they have a cookie machine.
To be fair, it's not the weirdest thing on a space station. Deep Space Nine had a whole gambling casino, so, you know. After Nora yells this is the last straw, Larry offers to go get her some more, as Nora then yells that Larry has to turn in his uniform. Larry says that, "Won't I look silly on the bridge in my underwear?" As Nora then screams that he is fired. I do love this moment too, that Larry takes it okay for a beat, then he instantly starts running off crying. It's really just the timing of the comedy in this show that makes it work out so well.
Yeah, that being said, a little bit of a downer note, but all this honestly is kind of on her. Like, Larry ain't exactly innocent in all this either, but if it wasn't for her being like, go downstairs and deal with my son, while he was like bringing attention to the cookies, this honestly wouldn't have happened in the first. The kids as well, but mainly her.
Yep. Also, the way Larry cries is just funny. He's literally like, "Unga." And that's when it hit me. Wait a minute. Larry's tall. He's lanky. He's purple. And he goes, "Unga." Is Larry Space Waluigi?
Now we know why Waluigi wasn't in Mario Galaxy then. Because he did the same thing at the Comet Observatory.
Back at your point, Angron, yeah, that is kind of her fault. But let's be just glad it was cookie dough that braked out in the control center instead of, a fire.
Exactly.
Yep.
Imagine.
We then cut to Lloyd and his friends pulling Nora and Dunkirk out of the cookie dough, as Dunkirk thanks them, saying how, "I've never been so disturbed in my entire life." Lloyd asks his mom what will happen to Larry, saying that he's worked on the bridge for as long as he can remember. Nora says that Larry had too many chances, that he isn't cut out for his job. Lloyd then asks what will happen with Larry, as she says that's up to him. Lloyd tries to argue the point, but Nora cuts him off, saying that he'll find out when he's a commander one day. She then says that she sent out for droids to clean up the mess, then tells Dunkirk they have to change out of these uniforms. Dunkirk agrees, saying how he smells like a ginger snap. Go ahead, Stormflame.
I just want to make a quick Star Wars reference. RDT2, why are you making me clean this cookie dough? It's gonna ruin my polish.
Eddie says that they have all the raw cookie dough they can eat, as Kurt eats some, saying how much he loves cookies, and in a cute reference says, "Cookie starts with C." But Kurt, my man, you have to wear the cookie-eating hat. You get with the program.
Exactly, man. You used to be Patrick. What happened to you, bro?
Lloyd tells them that Larry lost his job and it's partially their fault. Douglas agrees, noting how they did tell Larry to go and play hover disc with them, as Kurt begins crying about how they're evil. And Kurt, this might seem like a bad thing now, but you can redeem yourself if you get a job with the Hall Monitor.
Nice.
Eddie says how he feels guilty and asks what they can do, as Lloyd says they'll apologize, with Kurt excitedly saying how they'll be nice again. We cut to them arriving in Larry's apartment as he brings them inside, showing them his medal from Nora and a picture from a costume party where he dressed as a giant salad. The boys are surprised that Larry is taking being fired so well, as Larry says, "It's like my Uncle Mortimer always said," and presses a button underneath the portrait, causing it to say, "Always look on the bright side." And this portrait is voiced by Clancy Brown doing his Mr. Krabs voice.
So we got Patrick Star, Mr. Krabs. Is there a Squidward on that space station?
Well, we'll have to see, but this is not the last time we're going to see Clancy Brown.
Yeah, though I think there's a problem with the photo. It just said, "Larry, me boy, earn the money, keep the job. You failure otherwise."
Larry explains that he will listen to his uncle, as his uncle spent 70 years working in a lighthouse and never complained. Lloyd and the others prepare to leave as Larry says, "Oh, there is one thing you can help me with." When Lloyd asks what, Larry instantly begins to start crying again, in another really funny moment.
It's a normal, typical cry, the wah ha 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 kind of style. I'm actually amazed, considering he's even using the Mandark voice for this, which is just his normal speaking voice, that he just didn't go wah ha ha.
There was an entire episode of Dexter's Lab that shows Mandark does everything with that noise.
Exactly.
Yep.
Douglas suggests that Larry can get another job, as Larry says he doesn't know how, with Lloyd saying that they can help. Eddie says that he has high-level connections and can put in a good word. We cut to the group at the police station, as Larry is now working for Eddie's father, who is also voiced by Clancy Brown. The boys then all leave, as Eddie's father does not know what to do with Larry. Larry suggests that he could take his fingerprints or give Bork, a giant blob officer, a back rub. I will say this, at least Bork isn't related to Bort from that one Futurama episode. Bork yells at him, as Larry then goes to a jail cell with a prisoner inside. Larry asks if he can make that guy happy, as Eddie's father says that is Morgo the Melting Bandit, as Morgo, also voiced by Tom Kenny, begins laughing evilly. Eddie's father wonders what he could do with Larry, as Larry suggests being a judge, singing a song, or cleaning. Eddie's father decides to give him the last task, tossing him a feather duster, as Larry begins dusting everything, as Eddie's father then says, "Hopefully that'll keep you busy for a long time." As the blob officer continues to laugh, Larry then dusts a series of plugs, including a plug that holds the cell, unplugging it and releasing Morgo. Morgo then begins laughing evilly, and starts melting random things, including Larry's feather duster and Eddie's father's hat, before then running away.
Yeah, I'm wondering, they have a plug just for their own security. Is their security that cheap or something? Is there a budget cut for...
As Eddie's father and Bork prepare to run after the Melting Bandit, Bork is the one who tells Larry he's fired in his gibberish language. We then cut to Zinkos, where Kurt's dad, who is both tiny and is also voiced by Bill Fagerbach, who is actually doing a high-pitched version of the Patrick voice, which just sounds absolutely hysterical, especially in a moment we'll get to in a couple of minutes. Works. Larry says that he screws up a lot, as Kurt's dad says, "There's no way you could screw up making copies for a living." Kurt's dad says that the first thing to do is wait for a customer, as one then arrives, also voiced by Tom Kenny. Kurt's dad takes the paper from the customer and teaches Larry how to copy it as he does so, with the customer being annoyed at how long it takes. After Larry manages to copy the paper and takes the customer's money, he then asks, "Did I do good, Kurt's dad?" To which Kurt's dad replies, "You did better than good, Larry! You did fine!"
Wow.
Larry then gives Kurt's dad a high five, causing him to fall on the copy machine, and the scream that is used here is the exact same scream that Patrick does whenever he's being attacked, which is really hilarious when it's sped up like this.
Yeah.
You know, when he comes out of the copy machine, says Larry is fired. Is that a legitimate reason to fire a guy? It seemed like more like a accident at the workplace.
Yeah, technically speaking, he was still doing a job. He was copying things. No technical harm came from it. So I say let the boy keep the job.
Well, it's because he now has yet another employee and he can only pay one and he's not going to fire himself.
Like I say, I do love that moment where Larry asks if he'll be fired, as Kurt's dad says, "You're such a nice guy, Larry! I can't bring myself to do it!" As Larry smiles at this. Then Kurt's dad clone walks up and says, "Yeah, well I can! You're fired!" It's just such a funny moment. It probably doesn't sound that funny, but seeing it in action, it really, really is hilarious stuff.
Exactly.
We then cut to Larry lamenting to the boys that he can't do anything, as Lloyd tells him not to worry. Larry is now going to be working with Boomer, the parking attendant, who literally just sits around and does nothing all day. Boomer says that Larry will be an excellent assistant to the parking bay assistant, as Larry says he'll give it a try, only for Douglas to say he'll succeed. But seeing as how trying to do nothing for a living worked for Stanley SquarePants, I don't know if it'll work as good here either. Larry asks if he should start doing nothing, but says he doesn't know how. Boomer literally shows him by just sitting there and doing nothing. Larry is impressed at this, as Boomer says, if you stay perfectly still, you can feel all the good vibes of our space station of love. Which is nice and all, if only it was the satellite of love, because Tom Servo and Crow T Robot definitely need a nice vacation.
Yep.
Like, far out, man. Feel all the vibrations and the vibes. Like, that guy has a literal aura. Don't know what kind of species he is to do that.
I feel like this guy hangs around a certain tree hugger and a chaotic spirit of discord and a very shy yellow mare of the distant
Nice.
planet Aquis. They probably trade their special muffins with one another of love and nature and vibes, man. Okay, I'm done with that big voice.
We then cut to the bridge where Dunkirk tells Nora that another irate citizen is calling, despite Nora being busy. She takes the call, and it turns out to be Stinko the Garbage Man, who is also voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, so that alone is awesome casting right there. As he complains about not receiving his birthday card, Nora yells how she doesn't know anything about that and hangs up. The pet owner calls, saying that he needs his pet cheered up. Nora ignores him as the pet then runs off again. Dunkirk says they have 12 more calls and wonders what's happening, as Nora asks if this day could get any worse. However, an alarm goes off as the airlock then opens up, sucking out cars and other debris before it is closed. Boomer is impressed at Larry for causing so much havoc by literally doing nothing, as Larry says, guess I shouldn't have sat on this panel that says, danger, do not press.
Exactly.
You think?
He asks if Boomer will give him another try, as Boomer says that sadly he is fired. Larry says that he's fine, before we then cut to his apartment with him packing up. Lloyd and the others arrive, asking about the airlock, as Kurt excitedly says, I saw a ladder float by my window!
Right, I got perfect ideas for jobs for him. Maybe a laboratory or something, like a Mr. Dexter's laboratory. Or maybe the Outer Rim Polar Express rail line. You never know.
Yeah, while that ladder was floating outside his window, he was probably practicing his ever-important mayonnaise recital.
Larry says that he doesn't belong on the space station, and he instead is going to the Great Void, where he could be a lighthouse keeper like his uncle. Lloyd yells that he can't leave, as Larry says that he must and runs off. The boys are shocked at this as Kurt leans on the portrait, causing it to say, always look on the bright side, as Lloyd and Eddie both know that there is no bright side to this.
The only bright side I want to see be for me money. Where's me money, boyo? I.
We then cut to the station a few days later, where a customer angrily returns a drink to the owner of a fast food restaurant, yelling how it's not big enough. The owner asks the clerk why it isn't big enough, as the employee is too sad that he didn't get a birthday card. A small child asks if they have the Knock Knock newsletter, but it isn't there, as the kid says, why even go on with life? And a joke that actually was really dark. I was shocked they went there. Douglas notes how everyone is in an unpleasant mood, as Eddie notices the same Muzak song is playing over and over again. Lloyd says that he feels bad because of Larry, and how he's in a lighthouse in the middle of nowhere, as Kurt notes how he must be sad. Lloyd suggests that they call Larry, as Kurt excitedly says, oh boy, let's use a phone! We cut to them calling Larry, who is then dressed in the captain's outfit and is singing to himself, talking to someone off screen and asking if they're having a good time. Lloyd and the others call, as Larry says that he's doing great and how he doesn't screw up yet. He then says that he is talking to Bulby, who is a giant light bulb.
I get the feeling he's going to be visited by a very angry robot who's looking for his shiny meadow ass.
Either that or Homer is going to arrive to the lighthouse searching for his soulmate.
That or a giant dragonite in space. You never know. That might honestly happen. Like I'm just now picturing the mental image of a giant female dragonite with a fishbowl space helmet just loading up and looking at Larry.
Or that dinosaur from the Beast of 20,000 Phantoms somehow got into space and is looking around that lighthouse.
Nice, nice. Lloyd notes that Larry is talking to a light bulb, as Larry says that she's his best friend and not stare at her as she doesn't like that. Lloyd says that if he and Bulby are happy, then they're happy too, as Larry says, "Goodbye, people from my past," and hangs up, talking to Bulby yet again. And I do have to say this, Larry lucked out here because he's alone in this lighthouse. So that means Robert Patterson won't beat him to death. We then cut to the control room where Dunkirk is shocked to see that his bamboo tree has wilted and wonders why, as Nora explains that it just needs water. Dunkirk realizes this, but then notes that he never watered it and somebody else must have. Nora goes up to the water cooler, but then finds that it's empty. Realizing that she's never filled it, she then asks Dunkirk if he ever filled it up. He says no, and then screams, "Will our tribulations never end?" as the pet owner then appears. He tells him that his pet is missing once again, as an alarm goes off. It turns out to be a red alert in engineering, which leads directly to the reason why we're discussing this.
And a little thing to note here, Larry has both caused problems by actively doing something and doing nothing at the same time. So basically at this point, he has become a necessary evil.
I'm not sure if anyone here has experienced changing a water jug. It is kind of pretty difficult, to be fair, so that must be his most impressive feat, if there's never been a spill or anything from that water cooler.
Nora contacts engineering, who is run by none other than Nessie. Nessie hears a spoof of Scotty from Star Trek, and she has pink scales with 2 antennae and a really overall rotund appearance, which, if you know why, James Doohan infamously gained quite a bit of weight in between some of the Star Trek movies, and yeah, it was notable, so for a long time, people were making jokes about how James Doohan was a little bit overweight. The Simpsons especially love to ring that bell.
Also, given the other Nessies that we covered on here, a little bit of a pear-shaped figure is pretty much par for the course for this, given the kind of thing we're talking about here, which is being Nessies.
She looks like she could be a character from Happiness, but because she's in this show, she's automatically animated better than any character from Happiness.
I would say it's a reference to Happiness if literally anybody remembered that show even existed, so just chalk it up as a coincidence, I think. She's actually voiced by Trish McNeil here, and although Nessie is pretty much a straightforward parody of Scotty from Star Trek, it is a really good one, and Trish's performance definitely helps out a lot with it. Oh, go ahead, Storm.
I have the feeling Nessie here is somehow the descendant of another Nessie from Disney, because Disney seems to like giving Nessie a pear-shaped body.
Very true. Very, very true. Nessie tells them that something is in the reaction chamber, and unless they do something, the whole station will go kablooey. Nora asks if they know what the object is, as Nessie explains that it's the pet from earlier. The owner says that his Schnookums always loves going into warm places when he's upset, as Nora asks how does he get him out. The owner says that he always gets Larry, as Nora tells Dunkirk to get her son while she goes down to engineering. We cut to her, the pet owner, and Nessie in engineering, as Nessie tells her that the pet is stuck near the giant plasma ball. I do love this touch. They give Nessie so many little Scottishisms in her dialogue. That is such a fun touch. They didn't have to do, but the fact that they did is really creative.
Yeah, it's definitely adorable here and adds to the overall sci-fi-ness of Nessie pretty much being a Scotty, but female and an alien plesiosaur. It's really great, and I honestly hope that they did more of her going forward, because this right here just, it serves me soup, don't you know?
Nessie explains that only the pet can survive that level of heat, as the owner says that he tried calling his pet, but it never responds to him. Nessie explains that somebody has to get the pet out of the vent, or the whole station will explode within 2 minutes. Nora approaches the vent, and in a really funny moment, she starts cooing to try to get the pet out of there. And April Winchell's line delivery here is really just so funny. She is such a talented voice actress for many reasons, but especially in this moment in particular. Lloyd and the others then arrive as Nora asks about Larry, only for Lloyd to say that he's out at a lighthouse in the Great Void. Nora notes that's a 5-hour flight away, and the station will explode in a minute and 50 seconds. Everyone is shocked that the station will explode, as in a really hilarious moment, Larry just walks so casually into frame. It actually got a really good laugh out of me. Lloyd asks what Larry is doing there, as Larry says, "I'm hanging out in the engine room with you guys," before Lloyd asks why Larry is there. Larry then explains, "You guys got a minute? Because I can explain everything," as Nessie screams about the meltdown being intimate in 1 minute.
You know when Larry comes back and he says, did he actually explain how he came back from a 5-hour flight?
No, he didn't, but I think that's actually part of the joke, how they're so worried about Larry not being there, and he literally just walks into frame. That really got a good laugh out of me. Nora then says that Larry can tell them later, as he then has to rescue the animal right now. Larry asks the pet why it's in the reaction chamber, as the pet then starts to meow, before then talking in English, telling Larry that he's depressed. Everyone else there is shocked the pet is speaking English, as Larry then asks why the pet is depressed, only for the animal to say that he hates being a pet, but it's the only job I could get. Larry then tells the pet to look on the bright side, as they're still friends, as Nessie begins counting down from 10. Larry tells the pet that they can play hover disc together, as the pet then leaps into Larry's arms at the literal last second, as they are then all out of danger. Nora and Lloyd then ask why Larry is there, as Larry says that after they hung up, he realized he was alone in a lighthouse, talking to a giant light bulb, and says, "A lighthouse isn't a person," as Kurt says in a really hilarious way, "I noticed that too!"
Yeah. Also, at this point in the episode, I was kind of expecting that he was going to reveal that somehow Bulby fired him as well.
That would have been
If
hilarious.
only.
Larry explains that he can't water plants or send birthday cards for light bulbs, as that's what makes him happy. Everyone realizes that Larry is the one who does the little things in the station, as Lloyd asks his mom if Larry can have his job back. She says that he can't because he's not suited to be the communication officer, but she then decides to make him Lieutenant of Morale Support, as Dunkirk hugs him, saying how he's glad Larry's back. And I do like this. I like how it's a little more realistic, that he's not suited for his old job on the space station, but they make a new one so he could still do the things he likes while also not getting in the way of the other job. That's actually pretty clever writing. The pet owner then hugs the pet too, saying how he's glad that he's back, but the pet says that he'll only come back if he's the owner, and the owner is the pet. The episode ends with the owner agreeing, hugging the pet and saying, "It's a living!" Womp, womp, womp.
The whole pet speaking thing, that surprised me as well. I just want to say, being a sentient creature and your actual job as a pet, what type of universe is this?
The kind where apparently that sort of role can apply to even people like his owner, which it brings up some very interesting implications, that's for sure.
I am generally worried if there was any slavers in that galaxy. But I'm most likely overthinking it, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
This episode actually missed one little thing. They should have had a post-credit sequence of Kurt going to the lighthouse and going up to Bulby and being all, "Life, death, life, death, life, death," with her.
Yeah.
Or again, Bender coming, "Is this the lighthouse that has my metal ass?"
Funny you should say that, because they actually got John DiMaggio to basically reprise his role as Bender. He plays the backup computer system of the space station, and it literally is him just playing Bender. He even says, "Shut up, baby, I know it," at one point.
At this point, I am convinced that when the directors of this series went to the Disney executives and said, "Okay, who do we get to voice the characters in this cartoon?" the Disney executives just did the Gary Oldman meme. Everyone!
Yeah, we do everyone. Torbeck wants to see all of them.
Perfect. And yeah, Lloyd in Space ended with its 4th season, and it seems to be decently remembered, though not as much as other shows of the same vein, such as Pepper Ann, Recess, The Weekenders, or even Doug. It's kind of funny how this is kind of the black sheep of the Disney slice of life shows, and I wonder if it's because it's realistic, but at the same time, it has the sci-fi setting, which I personally really enjoy, but I can see why for some people are watching it expecting epic space adventures, it being another slice of life show could be a little surprising.
Yeah, I do not gotta agree. It's more down to earth compared to stuff like Mighty Ducks, Wuzzles, and a bunch of other shows that have fantastical stuff about them, and yet we just get a space sitcom right here, and while that's not really a bad thing, it doesn't exactly mean it can always stand head and shoulders alongside shows like, again, Recess and Pepper Ann. It's not that bad, but it's something that doesn't exactly fully scream popular. It speaks it.
What's also interesting is that there is actually a lost episode of the show. There's an episode called Picture Perfect that aired only in Asian territories, and Paul Germain has confirmed that it does exist, but no copy of it has ever been found as of yet.
Interesting.
I kind of wonder why they never made was it very controversial or?
Well, it actually aired, but it only aired overseas and just fell by the wayside apparently.
Yeah, it's a little weird when these type of things happen with these lost episodes. Makes you wonder why they never put it in DVD or something.
Yeah.
And also, Lloyd in Space sadly is currently not on Disney Plus, so they really should get on that. But yeah, I like this show for what it was. It brought back really good memories. I remember watching it as a kid and really enjoying it, and I can see why it actually does hold up, as well as Recess. Debatable, but at the same time, the sci-fi setting is so creative. I'll be honest with you, I like these alien designs way more than the one from something like Elia, where they just seem so over-designed and over-detailed. These were simple, but yet alien enough to where it really worked.
I can see why.
Yeah, I agree to an extent, but I also think that Elio did its own thing pretty well in spite of some of the designs that were pretty over complex for the most part. But yeah, I definitely like the premise here nonetheless. It's simple. Yeah, it's one of those things that definitely feels it would be at home in a sci-fi sort of setting.
As a massive fan of sci-fi from Star Wars, Mass Effect, and even Warhammer, I could say I kind of like the backgrounds and everything here. It is simple-ish, but the designs are pretty sci-fi-ish. I could see it like in something in Ben 10 a little, but not as simplified as this show betrays it. But yeah.
Now it is time for the question of the week, which is, what is your favorite in space media? And by that, we mean it's something normal, but they set it in space. And I'll go first, and my answer is obviously going to be, you know it, you love it, it's the greatest movie of all time, Leprechaun 4 in Space. Wait, no, not that one. Although it does have Warwick Davis hamming it up, and he's great as always. But no, seriously. My answer is actually one that I actually think is kind of underrated in terms of being a movie, and that is Jason X, aka the one where Jason is cryogenically frozen and winds up on a space station. I feel like why it works is because it was the franchise saying to itself that, look, we know that we've ran the course. We've already made 10 of these movies. There's nothing else we could do with it. Let's lean into self-parody. They have that great moment where Jason is locked inside the virtual reality and the two virtual women walk up to him. Do you want to do some drugs or some alcohol or have premarital sex? We love premarital sex. And Jason just stares at them blankly. You could tell that this was a movie that was made partially because they were trying to hype up Freddy vs. Jason, but at the same time, it's kind of the Friday the 13th series acknowledging that it has kind of become self-parody by this point, and it actually does hold up. I'm sorry, it's a movie that, is it perfect? No, the effects a lot of the time really haven't aged that well. Kane Hodder is great as always, of course, and yeah, canonically, this is actually the last of the Jason timeline because he burns up on re-entry. That is how he is finally killed after he becomes the Uber Jason. And even that is one of those things that are just so ridiculous. He's revived by nanobots and becomes this giant, even more unstoppable killer. And it really is a movie that it's better than the sum of its parts. At least that's how I feel about it. It's a movie that it's winking to the audience saying that, look, we know we've gone on for too long. You know we've gone on for too long. Let's have fun with this. And yeah, you can really tell what they did because there's a lot of really funny moments, like the part with the professor. It's okay, guys, it's okay. He wants his machete back.
Yeah, I gotta agree that, like, honestly, though, I think one of the best moments in this series was one of Jason's kills, interestingly enough, which, yeah, if you know, you know. It involves a certain liquid nitrogen moment, and yeah, it is quite bone chilling. Pun fully intended.
Yep. I mean, it was famous enough to be replicated on Mythbusters, so you could tell it was a big hit right there. And yeah,
Nice.
that's actually gonna be my pick because again, it's a movie that you can tell they're just winking to the audience and having fun while doing so. So yeah, that's actually gonna be my pick for my favorite in space media is gonna be Jason X. Let's see, Angron, what would your pick be?
Now would probably be the time where I ultimately do the obvious thing and pick Furries in Space, aka Star Fox. For this one, I'm gonna give a little nod to something that's a little more obscure, or at the very least, not very well liked, but I like it enough to at least give it a mention here. The same people that brought you Fairy Tail gave you One Piece in Space, aka Eden Zero. I know this has a little bit of a reputation for basically being Fairy Tail, but in space, but that's honestly what you get for looking at things on the surface. Looking deeper, yeah, it's One Piece but in space, but there's honestly a bit more to it than that. Not too much more, but you get some pretty intense stories, you get an overall plot that pretty much takes itself seriously, but also isn't afraid to have a little bit of fun. Like, it's a little bit of Fairy Tail with a bit of Cowboy Bebop, and again, a bit of One Piece here and there, but yeah, it is just one of those things that really fascinated me, and I'm very excited to see where the series goes in general. Like, a lot of people have said that the manga wasn't exactly very good, and by that logic, the show is probably going to be the same, but I don't really care. I enjoyed what I saw so far. It was impactful. It was fun. All the characters have unique stuff and like characterizations. Like, one character is basically the past self of a future character who one of the main characters personally knows, who actually fixed up this universe's version of Happy, which is basically a robot cyborg that transforms into two freaking pistols. Like, I think you pretty much see why I'm so goddamn excited about this series. So yeah, on that merit, I am 100% going to give Eden Zero its due and say, definitely check it out. Is it perfect? No. Is it still enjoyable? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yep, that's a great choice right there because again, you can really tell why it's such a really well-made franchise because of that. Let's see, Math, what would your pick be?
So I have decided to go with what I think is roughly the originator of the blank but in space subgenre, if not in animation, the whole of media at large, the Jetsons. This is one of my favorite shows because, I apologize for this pun, it was actually really ahead of its time. It was just the Flintstones, but in space at the surface. When you actually get down into the episodes themselves, they were incredibly creative. This actually might be Hanna-Barbera's most creative and innovative show. The character designs, particularly with the outfits, were the whole, oh, there's rings around everything, or oh, the sci-fi stuff of the 60s, but they added a lot of originality to things that we now consider tropes of sci-fi or in space stuff that started here. The only problem with the Jetsons is, well, it was going up against Flintstones and nothing's going to beat the Flintstones. So it just died in 1 year. It was very, very popular in reruns, though. That's why you saw the 80s revival, which is another one of those very early innovators on the 20-year later revival ideas, just because it got so popular in reruns that there was a large demand for more Jetsons. So this is quite literally another innovator of, you may not get this, but your kids are going to love it.
Exactly. It's one of those shows that it really actually holds up pretty well. Like you said, the comedy of it works. The design is amazing. It's futuristic yet retro in probably the best way possible.
It's also probably got Hanna-Barbera's best side characters. You're never going to beat something like the Flintstones or Scooby-Doo for main characters, but with side characters in this show, they were great. Mr. Spacely and Rosie the Robot are the standouts of the show, and I think in all of the Hanna-Barbera library.
And lest we forget, Rosie the Robot is John Vanderpill, who also is Wilma Flintstone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, let's see. Sharkwood, your pick me.
Well, I'm gonna answer with something that I have talked about before, and it's because, I've said it a million times already. These two are my favorite video game of all time because they are so great, they are tied. So we have Super Mario, we had Mario 64, and we had Mario Sunshine. What else we can do with this plumber? Send them up there to space in Super Mario Galaxy! Woohoo! This is probably like the third time I talk about them, but these games are just amazing. Like, the whole concept, have Mario in space, explore several planets, and, all those planets has variety, different missions. The lava planet, the sea planet, the candy planet, the toy planet, and yeah, it's so great, it's so creative. They have so fun power-ups, and the music is amazing. It was like among the first times Nintendo ever used orchestras for their games and all of that. So yeah, what can I say that I haven't said before? They're fun, they're creative, they are great, they are emotional in some regards, they have the great music. The first game was so awesome, they had so many ideas, they had to make a second game, and yeah, to the point like the second movie was alright based on the games rather than something else. So yeah, that's my answer for that.
Easy
Damn,
to see
I'm
why,
happy.
because again, these games are some of the most beloved in Nintendo's library. It gave us Rosalina for crying out loud.
Yeah, it kind of makes me want to include Star Fox as part of my answer, because, yeah, furries in space, plus Nintendo, plus, yeah, a whole lot of reasons, Crystal being one of them. Also, might cover one of them one of these days.
Yep, wink wink. So, let's see. Stormflame, what would your answer be?
This is a lot difficult. I know a lot of sci-fi stuff, but I think I'm going to go with Halo. Yeah, I'm going with Halo because a lot of people think it's just Call of Duty in space, but it kind of is. But I do like it, and this is a guy who absolutely does not like shooter. To me, all shooters look like the same game. Call of Duty, shoot, shoot, bang, bang. But this franchise has better stories than any Call of Duty game I ever known, better visuals and interesting concepts, and probably the biggest ships designs you ever gonna see in sci-fi. They're freaking massive.
Indeed.
If you think the Citadel from Mass Effect is big, you have never seen a Covenant supercarrier in your life, because that thing is a massive, not as big as Star Wars ships, of course. They go ridiculously big, but yeah, I think the first game I played was Halo Reach, not in the main games, just Reach at first, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It's a great start. Yeah, it's an interesting answer.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
playing the first one when I was like really young, but what really got me into Halo was Halo 3 ODST, and I don't think it's really a controversial thing to say that Halo 3 in general is the best of the Halo games. Also, on the topic of every shooter being the same, nowadays you got something like Splatoon, which pretty much reinvented what it really means to be a shooter,
Yeah, I never played it, but I've seen it, and yeah, I could agree that I was just talking like back then when I was
Fair
growing
enough.
up.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I can definitely see why, because again, it's one of those franchises that you can really tell why it became so popular as it did. Now it is time for the patent-pending Dragoness Scale, where this time we're going to rank Nessie. This is probably our 6th or 7th Nessie, and I believe it's also our 3rd Disney one, so that'll be really interesting. I'll go first, and the thing about this character is she's a parody, she's a satire, she doesn't really have any connection or any characterization outside of what if Scotty was the Loch Ness Monster. But with that being said, it is really funny. It's a joke that's so obvious. It makes you wonder, why did nobody think of this before?
Yeah.
And Trish McNeil's performance, as always, is absolutely fantastic, and the design is really fun, especially, shall we say, the heft they give her, which, again, is a really cute reference. As well as, even if you don't know Star Trek, you can still get the joke of what it is. So, yeah, with that being said, I'm actually probably going to give her a little higher score than she deserves. I'm going with an 8 because, yes, she's simplistic. yes, she's a one-note joke, arguably, but with that being said, man, it is a funny, funny joke. So,
Yeah.
8 out of 10. Let's see,
Alright.
Angron, what would you give her?
I'll go a little higher. 9 out of 10. Like, yeah, I get what you mean. She is absolutely just a joke here. But like with the Hydra from Kid Icarus, they 100% do less is more here, and it works. It absolutely does work. I really like what they do with her here. She's basically an engineer, and she is pretty much just an anthro alien Nessie, but I really like what they do with her. They utilize her in a way that's very charming, very adorable, and yeah, again, she's basically just Scotty but a Nessie, but I mean, come on. It's Scotty but a Nessie. Like, that is the best possible thing you can do with someone like that. And for that reason, I am absolutely sticking to my guns and giving her a 9 out of 10.
Yep, I can easily see why. So let's see, Math, what would you give her?
I'm actually going slightly lower than you guys. So there's nothing really wrong with her. She's well designed, she's well animated, good voice delivery, good joke around her character and all that. Nothing bad. It's more that the problem is she is a background character, mostly for the referential joke.
Yeah.
They don't really do anything with her. She says all of about half a dozen lines, half of which is just her counting down. And there's just barely anything with her or that she is there for in the entirety of the episodes. I really, while have nothing to complain about her, can't really do much more than a 7.
I understand where you're coming from, like I say, but with that being said, I think she's going to still get a high score regardless. Let's see, Shark, what would you give her?
Oh, yeah.
I really like the concept of the character. Like, first, she's a parody of another character, so that's cool. And yeah, the whole idea that, we have a Nessie archetype, let's give her a Scottish accent. That's really funny. Like, I really love her expressions, like, the whole station will go kablooey and all of that. And yeah, the design is fine. Yeah, I really like the design, but yeah, she is a background character. She only shows up in this episode as well, so there is not much of her after this. But still, what we got of her is enough. I think I'm gonna go just like Matt and give her a 7 out of 10.
So let's see, Stormflame, what would you give her?
Right, okay. I gotta be honest, I never saw Star Trek of any kind. I thought that was too nerdy for me. And this is a guy who loves Star Wars and other nerdy stuff, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite on that. And I haven't seen this show since before I even started primary school. I think, oh god, it's so long. She is kind of a interesting choice for the podcast episode. I gotta admit, maybe because how little screen time she has, but I'm gonna give her this lassie here about 7.5 out of 10.
Okay. Wow, first time we've actually had a percentage of the character. That's pretty interesting.
I'm surprised none of you guys did it either.
So yeah, overall, this is our first episode, not of the Sky Month. And yeah, I overall really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun watching this. And hopefully we get to watch some more classic Disney animation sometime soon. So that'll be it for this week. If you have any questions, or if you want to see Nessie and Sylvia and Starfleet, you can email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us at Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse. Visit us at Blue Sky at blueskyfierydiscourse. Be sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon, leave a comment. Any all comments are appreciated. Next week, we are going to be looking at the 2021 Nickelodeon movie, The Loud House movie, which, yes, there is a dragon in it. And the fact I had to mention that is definitely not the weirdest thing about this movie. Well, I suppose every generation needs something like Family Matters, where it starts off as a realistic show, then it just completely goes off the rails.
Exactly.
So, that'll be next week. Until then, thank you all so much for listening, and take care.
Later, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Peace out.
Adios. See you all next week.